All right, it's time to get some insight into the Wisconsin Badgers from Nick Osen for 24/7 Sports, part of Badger 24/7. Nick, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us for what is a big game this weekend for both teams.
Yeah, Jeremy, I really appreciate it. And you know what? This game, it really can't be overstated, kind of the importance for both at this point, like you mentioned. Obviously, kind of some opposite weeks for these respective teams last week.
Yeah, well, let's start with the broad picture here of Luke Fickell, one of the biggest hires of the offseason, biggest names, going to a program that has been the same way for 30 plus years, but it's been good for them for most of those 30 years. How has Luke Fickell left his stamp on this program in his 10 months so far on the job?
Yeah, so I'll start with off the field. I think that Coach Luke Fickell and this staff have really kind of inserted some excitement, some juice into not only the fan base, but the recruiting trail. I mean, Wisconsin is on pace for their best class in a long time. They're at 24th, I believe, in the country right now, 21 hard commits, including, 8 or 9 4-stars, depending if you look at our rankings or composite. Really good job there. I think that they're really focused on obviously kind of raising the excitement, also fitting guys to their schemes. I'm sure, as we'll touch on later, the schemes are a bit different now too. On the field, I kind of wrote about it a little bit too. I think it's still early. I think there are some clear areas that have been really impressive, kind of like spotting out a weakness early and then seeing improvement just a week or two later. I know we both kind of talked about defense outside of this show. I think that's been impressive. Obviously, Fickle had some incredible defensive talent that he helped develop down at Cincinnati. Offensively, it's just been a little bit hard to tell because not only such a tough scheme or a new scheme to kind of adjust to, but, some top players have really gotten hurt, which is, it stinks for everybody, especially a team like Wisconsin that doesn't have necessarily a ton of playable depth at some of those key spots. But, I was a bit surprised by the hire in a positive way. Obviously, I grew up, around Wisconsin, went to school. So I didn't know that kind of the program and the athletic department would make a hire like this, such a big splash. So I think he's going to end up being a terrific hire. I think he's been incredible in some of those things we've seen so far. And, in others, it's early. I mean, they're 4-2. They're not, 2-4, 1-5, that much struggling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. For Wisconsin, I mean, they kind of felt one way, stuck to one kind of tree there, and everyone just assumed Jim Leonard would get the job. So to go get Luke Fickell, I think it sent a message that Wisconsin's going to try and go to another level. Of course, there's the risk of, hey, what has worked for all these years, we could go below that. But with a guy like Luke Fickell, it seems like they're on the right track already, just based on recruiting and the talent base they're getting.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's really interesting because not only did people kind of expect Leonard, like you mentioned, but like it was out there by a lot of people that, kind of usually are pretty spot on. I think many people, including around the program as well as just nationally, kind of figured that. And of course, now there's kind of that added storyline a little bit with Leonard this week. But I totally agree with you, Jeremy. I mean, what he did, Fickle, at the group of 5 level at the time, essentially with Cincinnati, to get that team to the playoff. And you can't really watch, necessarily a full day of NFL Sundays, not seeing some talent that he helped develop. Obviously, Sauce Gardner comes to mind, but several DBs, wideouts. I know we're both Bears fans, obviously got Cincinnati connection there. So I think that he's going to end up eventually getting Wisconsin back into that perennial playoff contender type talk, obviously, as that kind of opens up a little bit from 4 teams. But, right now, I think it's going to be really important to finish this year strong and then get those guys that he has helped bring in, really early and really quick.
Yeah, their one challenge now, of course, Tanner Mordecai out. What details do you have on that? And what do you make of Braden Locke coming in as the starter now against Illinois?
Yeah, so I mentioned depth or lack thereof. I think the QB room is strong overall, but it's so young, Jeremy, and I think that Mordecai was kind of this glue. Not only is he talented, obviously. I mean, you can see some of the numbers he put up at SMU, but he's just kind of that type of player, that when things break down, he can either potentially make a play with his arms, but his legs have been just really impressive. I think of kind of 3rd and 4s, 4th and 2s, plays like that. You've really been able to trust him. Now, details, I'd say they've been consistent, but pretty sparse, really, out there as well as kind of behind the scenes. I don't think there is a clear cut timetable. Now, he broke his hand. It isn't clear exactly what part, but I think it's just, kind of a general freak break. He was throwing the ball, it hit the helmet of an Iowa defender. So he's got a pin in there. And knowing him and how much, he really cares about this game and obviously playing for the Badgers in his last year of eligibility, I wouldn't be shocked just how aggressively he'll be kind of hitting this recovery. But something like that, you can't really rush it. It's not like some other body parts you can just play through pain at times. Like, he couldn't grip the football at the end. That I know is fact with my own eyes and ears as well. So that's something really difficult. Braden Locke, we actually got to speak with him yesterday at media. I will say he is a very impressive kid. He's young, the second year college football, first here in Wisconsin. Texas kid, played some big time high school football. A little bit shorter than Mordecai, not as fast, but does possess some athleticism. And I think where he's really impressed kind of his teammates and his coaching staff, without even really being asked about work ethic, Coach Fickle and I think 2 or 3 players that I was around just talked about how hardworking Braden is. I think that he spends kind of copious amounts at the football facility. I get the sense he's just kind of the kid, take care of what he needs to for school, and it's locking in on film, prepping for the next week. I was really impressed by how he kind of handled himself. Skills-wise, he's got pretty good pocket feel, good pocket awareness, can move around a little bit, and is accurate. I'll be curious to see. Obviously, Illinois' got a really good defensive line headlined, by a future pro there in Newton. But I think that he's, about as good of a backup as you can have right now. And it'll just be interesting to see without the experience of Mordecai going on the future with Locke.
So Phil Longo, so much has been made of this air raid offense, and it certainly looks different. The way they operate is different. How, Nick, and what are they effective at? Because Braylon Allen still seems to be having a pretty good year.
Yeah, definitely, Jeremy. So, you're somebody, I know you well enough. You know what Wisconsin has done for 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, it was called RBU for at least the last 10, 15 years for a reason. I mean, several of the top backs really kind of running back oriented. But you mentioned an interesting point. Braylon Allen has still been good, really good at times. I think of the Rutgers game. This last game, he was still pretty good. I mean, he was averaging, I think, close to 6 in several games, not necessarily season long, but he's been great. I think what is much different about this Phil Longo offense, you just look at kind of the formation. Typically, 3, sometimes 4 wideouts. It depends if they're kind of using the inline tight end or not, or if they're flexing him out. But it's just more pass oriented. I think when it's going in tempo, the air raid can be fantastic. I think of the first half against Purdue. And that second half is kind of when injuries started to fall. But first half, I mean, that was humming. That looked like a team that was going to end up potentially 10-2, maybe with a loss to Ohio State, but run through the West.
I would mention Purdue's defense is the same kind of scheme as Illinois. So it's a very interesting kind of watching that, and then we'll see what happens in this game.
Yep, exactly. And so I think that is kind of when it's playing with tempo, when it's not forcing things. I think the offense can be phenomenal. And because it's so spread out, obviously Braylon Allen's known as kind of a power back, but he still possesses speed, cutback ability. He had a fantastic run in that Purdue game, I remember. So I think just kind of how it looks and the basis of how it operates, I actually think it's a pretty natural fit for Braden Locke. I think that it made a lot of sense for him to come here from Mississippi State as a transfer. And there are a couple really good weapons on the outside, too. I know coming into this season, Chimere Dike is kind of the veteran wideout in the room. Talks of pro potential there. You got CJ Williams from USC. Obviously, anytime you're getting kind of a skill guy from USC, he's got to be pretty good. And then Will Pauling, didn't have a lot of talk about him coming into the year. A Cincy transfer that followed Coach Fickle about a month or so after that hire, month and a half. And he's kind of been Mr. Dependable, as they say. He lines up a lot in the slot, but possesses kind of some of that speed and, maybe twitch on the outside to be able to make plays as well. Those guys are going to be very important against an Illinois defense, like you mentioned. A lot of similarities with the Boilermakers.
This episode of the Illini Inquirer podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/Illini and get on your way to being your best self. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it? Well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of working against yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you and that therapist don't mesh, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend again and give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/Illini today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Illini. Last year, the Illinois win over Wisconsin was so striking, Nick, because Illinois just dominated in the trenches. And that is not very Wisconsin-like. The offensive line seems to have taken a step forward this season. What have you seen up front from them?
Yeah, I completely agree. So, in my time on the beat, I'd say it's been 85% positive with the offensive line. It's not going to be perfect, but I think just the cohesiveness of that unit has really improved. I'd say the first half against Iowa, and then really the majority of the second half, because Iowa, like Illinois, generally a team with some NFL potential up front. And, that's an aggressive team. They kept both Mordecai and Locke, pretty clean, as they say. I think there was one play, maybe it was well covered, maybe Locke held onto it too long, but, Iowa was able to get to him in the second half. But overall, Jack Nelson's definitely a name to know. We spoke with him yesterday. He's been on a lot of draft boards, specifically coming into this season. Tanner Mordecai, center. He's been really good blocking wise. At times, there's kind of been an adjustment with like his snaps, but he's been good. And then Riley Mahlman, a guy that not a lot of people really talked about, but Coach Fickle last week actually called him maybe the most consistent. And I get that sense too. He doesn't kind of have the notoriety maybe as like a Nelson on NFL draft boards all the time, but you don't hear his name a lot. Not a lot of penalties, not a lot of sacks allowed. And I think that's what's most important. It's got the size that you've kind of become used to for a Wisconsin O-line. And I think pass pro, still kind of room to grow a little bit. Running game, it's shown to be really effective here in the last 3 games or so.
Yeah. All right. Defensively, Jim Leonhard, as you said, now an analyst for Illinois, had great defenses there at Wisconsin. But this is where I've been most impressed with Wisconsin, just watching a few of their games, is what Mike Tressel and Luke Fickell are doing with that defense, which since that Washington State disappointment, giving up 31 points there, and Washington State ended up being pretty good. Cam Ward at quarterback, but they've allowed for 15 points a game. So what is working so well, and what did they do on defense?
Yeah, you and I obviously talked a little bit before this about the Wisconsin defense, and they have been honestly close to phenomenal since the game you referred to. I think that there was this worry early, and rightfully so. They were getting gashed in the run at times, or the pass, like you mentioned, the Washington State game. Not a lot of turnovers, but the last 3.5 games, it's certainly been the strength of the team. I think that what they're doing so well is they're playing in kind of the 3-3-5 or 2-4-5. I mentioned in our write-up Iowa State. That was my previous beat up until a couple months ago. And it's kind of this new hybrid scheme where it puts a lot of emphasis on some of the DBs. Obviously, you got to play the pass game, but also, come up physical and be ready if you need to diagnose and play up in the run. And I think that fans were getting a little impatient early, but now they're seeing Tressel and the staff have really done a great job. And I think what it does so well is you're certainly not comfortable passing generally, right? Because there are more DBs. But also with the talent that they have, I think of Ricardo Holman or Hunter Wohler. I'm sure a lot of Big Ten fans know. You've got guys that are quick and not afraid to hit up in the run game as well. And a couple names, I just mentioned Holman, actually a CBS Sports midseason All-American. I think he's got 4 picks on the year, including a 95-yard pick 6. Hunter Wohler, if he decides to leave after this year, he'll be a draft pick, probably a mid to late day 2 guy. But certainly probably by, round 3. I think he's just that prototypical ball hawk that can hit. Jake Chaney is a name that, I'm not sure as many people were familiar with coming into the year. he's kind of got the speed and twitch of like an outside linebacker, but he plays a lot of inside. We spoke with him again this week, just really well built, a good young leader on this team. I think those are some of your key names to know. I'd mentioned James Thompson Jr. along the defensive line as well. Got a little bit dinged up at times in the Iowa game, but what Tressel and this staff have done in not only reshaping the scheme, Jeremy, but just how it looked in 3 weeks, going from, they'd say the easier, fans would say the easier part of the schedule to then moving into conference play. I think it's been really impressive. And it's why I think Altmaier and the Illinois standouts are going to have a hard time at times in this one.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me, Nick, is, they have, 4 or 5 guys at the line of scrimmage, sometimes 6, and they can drop anybody. They seem to be willing to drop anybody. So, diagnosing that, picking up blitzes, and Luke Altmaier not being skittish with that, I think that's going to be key, because they can look confusing up front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And, I know that this is a big year for Altmaier, obviously kind of his first run in the show after their talented departures in the last couple seasons to the pro route. So I completely agree. I think it's something that, Tressel and the staff have gotten really creative. I think well-timed blitzes, or just how they line up, like you mentioned, and then dropping back a little bit. I think that was something that made things difficult on Deacon Hill. I understand Iowa didn't need to pass a ton. They don't need to win a lot of their games, but that was something I thought was really smart. I know a lot of the fans on my boards picked up on it. I think against, maybe most teams that do need to pass a lot, that would have led to a victory. Obviously, there was just one big play that kind of hurt things for the Badgers. And I'm really intrigued this week, my friend, to see how this kind of goes, because the limited times I've seen Illinois, but certainly studying up this week, they seem to have a pretty good balance. I really like their young tailbacks. And then obviously Williams is a stud on the outside. So it'll be intriguing to see how they kind of follow a script and how the Badgers defense makes things tough.
Are you looking for unique and comfortable Illini gear? Well, Home Field is a premium collegiate apparel based in Indianapolis that emphasizes their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including, of course, the University of Illinois. So go check out homefieldapparel.com, because their designs are super unique, because they delve into the archives and history of each school using unique logos and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. I'm scrolling at homefieldapparel.com right now with their Illini gear, and they have 1989 Fighting Illini basketball long sleeve. They got the Flying Illini logo, the script Illinois. You can get the pants, the joggers, that 1970s script, or a nice hoodie. They got the 80s Illini football helmet, the 2004-05 Illinois basketball logo on a vintage crew neck, the Ringer retro tee, the orange Ringer tee with Fighting Illini basketball on it. Go check these guys out, because not only is the design fantastic, but these shirts, guys, are incredibly comfortable. Home Field is all about authenticity and nostalgia. So give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their selection of colleges available, of course, including Illinois. And guess what? Our listeners get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. Again, 15% off at homefieldapparel.com with discount code Illini23. Whether you're looking for Illinois football gear for this season or Illini basketball gear for the coming season, check out homefieldapparel.com. Yeah, because Illinois can make big plays. It's just about the consistency of the offensive line and Altmaier. So I'm interested to see that. Well, there's a big game for Illinois, Nick. If they get to 4-4 going into the bye week after starting 2-4, with Northwestern still on the schedule, Indiana still on the schedule, Iowa, if you can score 15, 16 points, you got a chance to beat them.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunities in front of Illinois to potentially make a bowl game. So this one's huge, homecoming game for them. What's this game mean for Wisconsin?
Yeah, so if we would have done this podcast earlier in the week, I still certainly would have said it's a big-time game, right? I mean, every game in this conference is important, first and foremost. Additionally, Badgers are coming off of a loss. There are still high aspirations, and I think there should be. Again, it's not like they're 1-5 or 2-4, and the world is ending like people kind of reacted. They're 4-2, should have scored more, but lost to a pretty good team in Iowa, like you just referred to. But now, speaking with some of the players, I think of, I believe it was Jake Chaney, certainly Jack Nelson, Braylon Allen, talking about some motivation. For some of these veterans, I'd just say last year's loss is really sticking with them. Obviously, there's kind of the always wanting to avenge a previous loss, but I mean, we know what happened following that loss. There was the major shakeup within the coaching staff, and players keep relationships and they take that kind of stuff to heart. So I'd say big time game on those 3 or 4 levels. I think that it's important. Obviously, I certainly think the Badgers are still going to get to a bowl, but like you mentioned, Big Ten West, Illinois trying to get back into bowl contention again after a great year last year. So I think it's going to be, a highly physical, competitive game. And I'm grateful we got a nice afternoon slate, not maybe that 11 o'clock. I'll be there in person. And quite honestly, I'll say this. You didn't ask for a prediction quite yet, but just in terms of what would shock me, the only thing that would surprise me is if this game is won by more than 8 or 9 points. I think it's going to be played really within a score throughout.
So knowing that, I think it's going to be a close game too. If Illinois, in fact, turned the corner last week at Maryland, we'll see. But what do you think are the keys to Wisconsin picking up a road win?
Yeah, so you mentioned, the consistency or sometimes lack thereof for Illinois' offense. So I think Wisconsin's defense has to get in their heads a little bit, make things tough on Altmaier. For the most part, take away Williams on the outside. I was really impressed with his numbers, kind of studying up for this game. But we just talked about how good the defense has been for Wisconsin. I think it more so comes down to the offense. And I'll give you 2 top keys: protecting Braden Locke, because again, he's got great footwork. He's got a little bit of speed to him, but he's not Tanner Mordecai with experience or just being able to move like Tanner has shown. So I'd say taking good care and kind of protecting that. And then to me, a little bit more of a, kind of relying on and trusting Braylon Allen. I think that he has just shown, even when he gets dinged up a little bit here and there, like he is locked in, he's physically ready, and he can really change a football game almost by himself. So I think it's going to be tough, especially against the front that Illinois has, but got to get the ball into some of those players' hands and certainly keep it close till the fourth quarter.
Nick, before I let you go, of course, Illinois basketball fans gearing up for basketball season. They love their hoops around here. And Wisconsin, I had as a top 5 team in the Big Ten when I sent my poll in. So what are expectations up there? What do you think about this team?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm like those Illinois fans. I love hoops as well. So hopefully we can do one during the season. I did too. I had the Badgers, I think 4th, maybe 3rd, right next to Illinois. I'm high on both these teams. I thought that Illinois did great in the portal. I think Wisconsin, their one real addition, actually an Illinois native, AJ Storr, St. John's transfer, is going to be awesome. They brought back everybody. And, we've been fortunate to be at a couple open practices. There was just a scrimmage this last weekend. It's a really legitimate team, Jeremy. I think it's certainly NCAA tournament or bust for both these teams, but I expect them both to get into the round of 32. And I think if things click, stay healthy, I think of Shannon and Hawkins for the Illini. I think really of guys like Hepburn, Storr, Wall, and Stephen Kroll, just to name a few. Sweet 16 potential is what I would say for this Wisconsin team.
Yeah, Connor Segan, I think, can take a leap too. He was pretty good at the end of last year. Well, Nick Osen, great insight into Wisconsin, man. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you Saturday at Memorial Stadium for a big one, man.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
I'm very excited to announce our new partnership with Underdog Fantasy. We decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog Fantasy has a lot to offer, including their Pick'em game. In Pick'em, you pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania. If you think you know football, you got to check this one out. This year's Best Ball Mania has $15 million in total prizes up for grabs, with the winner taking home $3 million. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $500. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $500. That's a new deal. It was previously $100, now it's $500. Must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org.